This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one-of-its-kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sphurti, shakti and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Decoding Victory. It gives me a great sense of privilege and pride to welcome my guest for today, Mr. Vishal Soin. The Soin family is synonymous with phenomenal philanthropic contributions around the world, especially here in the Miami Valley region of Ohio, United States of America. Let us welcome Mr. Vishal Soin and talk about his journey in life in having the victory that he has in life. So let us welcome
Great,
Mr. Vishal
thank you.
Soin. How are you,
Glad
Vishal?
to be here.
Thank you
Yes.
so much for taking time. I know you're such a busy man. You are now managing all the business aspects of Soin Group of
Yes,
Businesses.
that's correct.
So it's amazing how far your parents came, especially Dr. Soin. We heard his journey in the last episode. And it's just so inspiring to know the journey that he's gone through. And now we would love to know more about your perspective about, just being born here, being raised here, and also if there were conflicts ever about you having an Indian background and being raised in America, so things like that. So we'll talk through your journey and we'll just keep it casual conversation. Our viewers may be able to send some questions later, which we'll probably,
Sure.
check with you later. But Vishal, can we begin with little bit with your childhood? So you were raised here in Dayton area. And where did you go to school? What are your fond childhood memories? If you would like to share some with us.
So actually I was born in Illinois.
Okay.
My father was working for Firestone at the time. And we lived there until I was maybe 4, a little over 4. My brother was also born in Illinois.
Okay.
And then we moved to a community called West Bloomfield in Michigan, outside of Detroit. And at the time, Dad was working for Williams International. And back then, Williams was a cruise missile engine maker.
Okay.
So they made small jet engines. Today, they make engines for business jets and so on. But back 40 years ago, it was primarily a defense company and a cruise missile maker. And we lived in Michigan till I was about 10, 11.
Okay.
And then we moved to Dayton. And so when we came to Dayton, we settled in Beaver Creek. So I'm a product of Beaver Creek High
Okay.
School. And then when I did my undergraduate, I went to Purdue. So
Yes.
kind of just making a
Right.
box around the Midwest.
Yes. Yes.
And then I did business school at North Carolina, University
Okay.
of North Carolina.
Okay, wonderful. So what are your fond childhood memories? Do you remember your days in Michigan? Probably because you
So
were...
it's interesting because when you think back on your childhood,
Right.
everything changes, your perspective changes. So Michigan, I always remember as being, even in the winter, when we had feet and feet of snow. And in fact, one time I remember we had so much snow, the front door was blocked in. Dad climbed out the second-story window onto the little roof to get out of the house to dig us out. But it always seemed like it was white and sunny.
Right, yeah.
And whether that was truly the case or not, I don't know. But that's how I remember it.
Michigan, yeah.
And then in Beaver Creek, very unique. Where we live today, and where my parents live today, is also the woods that I grew up, my brother and I, exploring, playing in, and so on. It was all woods, it was all undeveloped, and the neighborhood we grew up in, we could go down to the end of the neighborhood, drop into a creek there and follow the creek all the way back to what is now my backyard and part of my parents' property and all that kind of stuff. So that was, and it's fun for me to kind of show my children.
Right,
The great memory is there is an old abandoned truck in the woods.
Okay.
And it's been there at least 40-something years because my brother and I found it when we were kids, probably early teenagers.
So both of your kids have a blast.
And I have shown
enjoy.
my kids that same truck now. So it's fun. It's unique.
Yeah, that's great. So you were out in nature a lot then while
Yes.
growing up? That's awesome. So football season, do you support Michigan or Buckeyes?
So it's funny.
Have to ask that question.
So growing up around here,
Yeah.
it's Ohio State.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I went to Purdue.
Okay.
And
yes.
so for Big Ten, when it comes to Purdue versus Ohio State, I was highly disappointed a couple weeks ago, but I have to support Purdue in that one.
Right.
And then our daughter is at Clemson.
Okay.
And so my wife and I do
You have to
most Tiger football games that we can.
Okay, got it. Well, nice to hear about your childhood and, a little bit, you remember a little bit of Michigan. That's amazing. So that story was probably very fascinating just to watch your dad coming down from that second story and something you can't forget, right? Yeah, lovely. So growing up here in Beaver Creek, and I'm sure a lot of parents are saying, yay, we are doing the right thing by putting our kids in Beaver Creek schools. Look at Vishal now, So how you turned out. So tell me at what point you thought of coming back to the Soin business. And I know you went to school in Purdue, so was it always on mind for you? Or
So it was. I always had an interest in business. I had an interest in the business we were in.
Okay.
And so when I went to Purdue, actually, I went to be an aeronautical engineer.
Okay.
And
the best school for it, I believe.
Phenomenal school.
Yep.
More astronauts out of Purdue back then than any other school.
Yep.
And and along the course of study, and it's interesting how one class or one professor or something like that can really have an impact on you. And so I had at the time a professor of aerodynamics, which was phenomenal. Very engaging, fun topic, but at the same time, I had a professor of statics, structures and statics, who was very monotone, very boring, and teaching, frankly, to me, a very boring subject.
I can imagine.
And I remember sitting in the class going, there is absolutely no way I can do this the rest of my life.
Okay.
And so at that point, I decided I wanted to change my major.
Okay.
And I wanted to change my major into still engineering, but something that I'd find just more interesting.
Right.
And then frankly, something that would allow me to do at the time, and I don't know if it's changed, but in the hard engineerings at Purdue, you could only get a minor in engineering. And so I also wanted, I had other interests. And so what I did is I switched from aeronautical engineering to interdisciplinary engineering.
Okay.
With a focus on biomedical. And interdisciplinary engineering also allowed me to get a minor in outside of engineering topics. So when I graduated Purdue, I graduated with a degree in biomedical engineering with a minor in philosophy and a minor in psychology.
Okay.
And in fact, I think the other two, the minors, have really helped me frame my style and my management style and so
You
on.
read my mind. That's what I was thinking. Those are such interesting subjects, but very helpful in practical life. Right?
They are. And the
Yeah.
engineering gave me enough foundation
Right.
that when I'm talking to the engineers or even to entrepreneurs and so on, I can speak the language, I
Right.
can understand enough to be dangerous, and still bring the emotional side to
Right.
things.
Right, yeah. So what do you remember about Purdue the most? Your life, what was it, 4 years there?
It was 4 years
Yeah.
at Purdue. As everyone says, it was college,
Yeah.
right? So it's some of the finest 4 years of your life.
Right.
Great friends that I still hold dearly today, and football. Really started getting a passion for watching the game, and there's so many memories. It's just a fabulous time of life.
Yes. My nephew goes to Purdue now.
Okay, great.
We visited the campus a few times. It's such an amazing campus. I mean,
Yeah.
you have a good mix of, like, you get a feel of history. At the same time, there's so much of modern aspects to it.
Yeah.
So it's like, as you said, aeronautical engineering. You enter the campus, and that's the big thing that, like, kind of welcomes you, you know. So
Yeah, well, and then you've seen the food delivery robots.
Yes.
Because when
Oh,
my
yes.
daughter was looking, we toured
Okay.
as well, and very unique.
Right. Yeah. Amazing place to study, and I'm sure you have very fond memories of it. And as you said, you are still in touch with friends. That's always a nice thing. You know, I tell my kids, it's important to have friends, good group of friends. You know, so how do you think that? When you compare with the family support that you had, and I know from the interview with Dr. Soin that he was a very cool, liberal dad, and I would have to hear your story there. But at the same, no, I got that feeling because just the way he thinks about things, he's so progressive in certain things, not the typical Indian, parents that you see around. And I just feel that you, both Amol and you, are blessed to have them as parents, the way they have probably raised you and the values that you and it's hard always when you're away from your home country, So having that group of friends is really the cushion sometimes, and it's very important to have that support. So can I know your perspective on things about, just being raised in an Indian family? Did you ever feel that conflict, or were you always, like my kids, they would love to have mac and cheese for dinner and pancakes for breakfast. I would love to have dosas for breakfast and khichdi for dinner, There's a huge conflict there. There's huge conflict of interest on a day-to-day basis. But that doesn't mean we impose our thoughts on them, right? So how do you feel just being raised in that family? And I'm first generation, so I could totally relate to what Dr. Soin was saying with his journey. And you, I would love to hear your side.
So, as you said, so my
Yeah.
parents took a little bit different approach raising my brother and I
Right.
than a lot of their friends and their peers that were first generation. So their view was, we've come here, we've made it home,
Yep.
we've become citizens, and we're going to integrate. And so I don't speak Hindi very well.
Okay.
I can understand it, but I really we never spoke it in the home. Very different than, I know some of my friends, we'd go to their house and they weren't allowed to speak English inside their house.
Right.
And that's just the way their parents had elected to raise them, and my parents took a different route. So minor point, but it was very much, we're here, this is what we're going to do.
Right.
And then the same thing with, obviously I grew up in an Indian household, so STEM was STEM, grades, studies, very important. But so was sports, so was just being a kid. And so, like any kids or any parents would impose, we had rules, but we were given a lot of rope to make mistakes.
Okay.
Just not enough to hang ourselves, but enough to make mistakes. And so, we could learn from those. And we knew there was always a backup or safety net. And then, when we went to college, and I'm sure you talked to my dad, so he may have said this to you, and he did say this to me when I went off, which is as you go off to school, just make sure you don't waste it all on studying.
Yes, he did say that. Yes.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's something that I think now parents are realizing the importance of it, especially knowing the downside of just giving too much pressure, putting too much pressure on the kids. Unfortunately, we see some cases where things don't go well, the kids cannot really process it the way the parents are processing it. So I think it's very important for parents to show that there should be a balance.
Sure.
Your dad did a great job with that. So clearly you did well in studies and you are doing well now, and also you had fun in school.
Yeah.
So that's awesome to know. So what are your memories of your Indian connections, if I may ask that way, whether your grandparents visiting you, you may have visited India in your childhood?
We would visit India when I was younger.
Yeah.
Not very often.
Okay.
You just didn't have a lot of money. It's expensive. And so when we would go, it was in the summers during summer break, and it was for a very long time. and so, those memories are interesting because what sticks with you. We were there forever. It was hot. It's India. My mother's from Pathankot, so then you'd essentially go to an overgrown village.
Right.
And to me, Delhi is just an extremely overgrown village, right?
Yeah.
It's that whole city is just kind of grown up by doing this. And so those are some of the things that you remember. But then you remember the time with the family and the cousins.
Yep.
And the uncles and aunties and so on. And so those are all the fond memories of it. I remember I used to ride around on the scooter with my grandfather, and I was little enough I could stand in front of him on the scooter and hold on.
Kids love that experience when they were in India.
Which is, you think back now as a parent, it's like, shocking that would happen.
I know.
But
without helmets, that's another thing. Yeah.
So, and then I had another one of my dad's cousins, our Raju uncle, and as I got a little older, and I'd ride on the motorcycle with him.
Okay.
And then he taught me how to ride the motorcycle. And so those are the memories that really stick.
Sure, some of those adventures, I would say, I remember the first time we took our kids, and an uncle of ours had come to the airport to receive us, and he had this huge, like a mini van, So we put our luggage in, we put our kids in. Of course, one is not enough when you go to India. There are multiple suitcases, so you need a whole convoy. But anyway, the kids just loved being there inside without seat belts. They could in fact walk in there. I was like, please don't. That scared me, but they were having a blast. So I think those adventures really stay. So what about when you were growing up, did you ever feel that being from an Indian background, ever was a disadvantage to you? Times have changed, but what did you experience? Vishal, did you ever feel as a kid that, I don't want to say it, but it's more advantageous to be a white American or...
Yeah. No, not really.
Okay.
And some of that might be just, again, kind of looking back, how your memories might have changed.
Yep. True.
I went to Beaver Creek, okay? There were not a lot of brown kids in Beaver Creek at that point.
Correct, yeah.
And so I do remember that, but I don't remember much of it being a issue or problem.
Okay, that's good.
And then I went to Purdue, where there, same situation. There just weren't a lot of Indians there. It's a very Midwestern white type of school.
Right.
But never really felt much of an issue. I was the first Indian in our fraternity, and honestly, I believe I paved a good path because we've had a lot since then. I've got a lot of fraternity brother friends that are Indian now.
Nice. Yeah.
And so I really give those guys a lot of credit for opening the door and opening their arms.
Yes.
So my memories are probably more on the other side, where I didn't feel it was that negative.
Good.
It may be, especially in higher education studies today, it may be more of a disadvantage. So my daughter's at Clemson. Our son Gavin is, his applications, part of them are in, the rest of the applications are going in now. He's a high school senior. And just having the discussion around what box do you check?
Yeah. Right.
Because he's thinking potentially medicine, and I'm going, well, Asian Indian may actually hurt you in that situation. But then, our kids are mixed because my wife's American. And so I was like, well, you're half Indian, you're half white. Neither of those is going to help you right now for what you want to go do. So I'm not sure what you do in this situation.
Yeah, right. But see, the important thing that I heard from you, what you said was that you never felt that negative. So they were very accepting people around.
Yeah, and part of it is probably just my upbringing or the way I'd look at things.
Right.
I'm an optimist by nature.
Yep.
And a lot of times I would just look past things. So
little
things would happen. There'd be comments here or there, and you just kind of ignore them and move on.
Right. And I think, again, it is both sides, when we are in the middle of people who are very accepting to diversity and they love hanging out with people from other backgrounds, it makes it so much easier. And we feel blessed ourselves having such a wonderful group of neighbors. It's like we can never feel that we are from another country. We never feel that. We are, every neighbor that we have is an American, born and raised here, and their kids are mixing with our kids every day. They play together, so we feel very blessed in that manner. So I think in schools also, there is a lot of accepting culture, the efforts going around for that now. And so looks like you did not face any kind of discrimination anywhere. You did not. That was wonderful. I think the pressure comes when parents are trying to impose, this is just my opinion, parents are trying to impose too much of our culture on the kids. You're raising your kids here, so there has to be a balance. And also the kids sometimes see that as like they impose it on themselves as well. Like we have to be a certain way and all that. So I believe, and then again, peer pressure, right? Peer pressure is there too. So it's multiple factors, I believe.
Yeah, and our community does a great job. I mean, with Diffie and the World Affair.
Yes. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
The sharing amongst all the different cultures that we have represented,
True.
I think helps everyone else understand. I mean, the reality is we keep talking about, the Indian culture, but the Indian culture isn't drastically, it may be religiously different and so on, but it's not drastically different than the Spanish or even the Latin American Hispanics or the Italians or the Greeks.
Right, yeah.
And so on.
Yep. I agree. The more I think about these things and the more I interact with people, I just feel that we are all humans. We have the same emotions. I don't know why the people make a big deal of the skin color or whatnot. Women are women, men are going to be men. The way we process it is different. In fact, we joke about it when the group of mom friends meet up and, I'm the only Indian there and the rest of them are American moms, of course, different backgrounds. But we all have the same things to share, like problems about kids, jokes about husbands, and I'm sure you guys do the same about wives, but pretty much it's the same thing. We are all living our lives in a very similar way. We may have been raised in different backgrounds, but I think in the end what matters is humanity, right? The values are the same, and what we need to give importance is the same. Again, as you said, the religious, that part may be a little different for different people, and we just have to respect each other, right? I mean, accepting is a big part. Thank you for bringing up World Affair, because living in Dayton, I think we are very incredibly lucky to have World Affair every year, and thank you to Soin family for supporting it so much. We take our kids every year. We've been doing that for several years now, and it's amazing how they get exposed to different cultures, and even without an actual passport and visa to go to different countries, the kids have a blast going to different tents and learning about the countries. So I would really urge my viewers here to check out World Affair next time it happens. It's in May of every year. So this is a great opportunity to know about more cultures, and we are so blessed to be in Dayton region where there's a great amount of diversity. Yes. So I'm glad that started and it's going very well. So yeah, we look forward to more World Affairs every year. So Vishal, let's change track a little bit. As you were growing up, did you ever see your dad, Dr. Soin, in action at work, and what kind of impression did it have on the young Vishal?
So, yes, but in more of bits and pieces.
Okay.
What I saw, which ingrained, I think, the work ethic is I saw him work a lot. Mm-hmm. And he was on the road a lot, trying to build the business. And so to me, and whether it was upbringing or whether it's how I processed it or whatnot, I've never looked back going, oh, well, Dad wasn't there, Dad missed the games or any of this, because I don't remember any of that. But what I do know is what he was doing and the impact it has had on our family.
Right.
And so that really is what has stuck. And so I've also taken that, and I want to see my kids, or I want my kids to see me working in that similar way.
Right.
And so, so one of the ways I've worked on teaching our kids, and less so now since at least the older two are driving and the younger one will be driving here in the next few months, but driving them to school or picking them up from school or taking them to different events. And in today's world, so much of what I do is remote anyway and on the phone. I would specifically schedule calls when I knew they would be in the car. And I did that
That's
for
interesting.
I did that for a couple
Yeah.
reasons. One, they had to understand that there are times when you just can't be. You have to act appropriately for the situation.
Right.
Right. So it's, hey guys, we got to be quiet. I got to do this. This is important. But the other thing is they're listening, and they are picking up more and more than we realize. And so I could have a call, maybe it's on some deal we're working on or whatnot, and then get off of that, and then I could have a discussion with the kid. Okay, what'd you hear?
Yeah.
What'd you understand? And some of the questions they come up with are, wow, I actually didn't think of that. That's
Right.
very useful. And I do that because growing up around the business, I didn't realize how much I picked up
Right.
just by being around it, and so I've tried to take that forward.
Okay.
But in terms of watching Dad work and so on, there wasn't a lot of direct, sitting in a meeting and so on until I was out of college and I was working in the business and so on.
Right.
But there had to have been enough indirect that I took something away because I've started implementing that.
Right, right. Yeah, it stays with you as an impression. So when I was talking to Dr. Soin, he did give a lot of credit to Mom,
Yes, of course.
Mrs. Indu. So he said that she somehow managed the calendar in a way that he never felt that he was missing anything either. And he felt very happy, in fact, when he had a little bit of doubt about that you all mentioned how much you never
Yep.
felt that. And you always felt Dad was present. So that is amazing, because building such a huge business, it's not easy. As you said, he was traveling a lot, he was working many hours. And to young parents like us, that's an everyday challenge. It's a challenge. I'm trying to manage my family calendar. I can't do it consistently. I have to take a lesson or two from your mother, but it is a challenge every day. So yeah, just knowing that you, as a young Vishal, you were able to just learn from those encounters or those moments that you were able to watch him in action, and you remember and you're implementing it, speaks of the success there, That's amazing. So how, I know you mentioned about having meetings in cars when the kids are around. What else are you trying to do in terms of, their personality development? Maybe we could learn some things from you, the way you are raising your children.
Yeah, well, our household operates similar to the one I grew up in.
Okay.
And so Melissa has done the bulk of the raising and parenting. And so we have 3 wonderful children. It's been a joint effort, but the heavy lifting, right, is done by Mom, and so you have to also give credit where credit is due, and I think part of that is, we're 2 different backgrounds. So we moved around a bit when I was younger, and then we planted here in Dayton, and we're a business family. Melissa she was an Air Force brat.
Okay.
And so she was born in South Carolina. My father-in-law got stationed in Italy.
Okay.
So she lived in Aviano until she was about 4. And then they were back in the States. And then they were in Germany. And so she moved around quite a bit. She got to experience many different cultures.
Right.
And one of the things I credit my in-laws with in raising Melissa, so she was an only child, but whenever they were stationed overseas, they lived off base. So they wanted to live in the community.
Right.
And
That's
so,
such a smart thing to do.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so I think that's why she got exposed to so many different cultures.
Correct, yeah.
And that's why she's been so engaging and embracing
Amazing, yeah.
the Indian culture and so on. And so we've raised our kids, exposing them to everything.
Sure.
And then, giving them they can pick their path, and, they can choose what they want to do. At this point, so our children are 19, 17, and 15.
Okay.
And so their values and personalities are pretty much baked at this point.
Okay. Yes.
And so
Right.
I'm very pleased with the job we have done, at least to date. And so how we've done this, and it wasn't by design.
Right.
It just it's how our kids have been raised, and what's happened. And they are having their work ethic is absolutely incredible.
Nice, nice. So while growing up in India, I used to hear my dad say it. My dad used to say every now and then, and I never gave importance to it. He said, I don't know how I've been blessed with such good kids, you know? I used to hear that on and off, but I was like, you know, we are not any great or whatever. As a kid, you just dismiss it. And now as parents, doesn't matter how much we put efforts, but I think there's still something that the kids, their own personalities, right? So as parents now, I feel incredibly blessed to have some of the best kids. You know, they have their moments, we have our moments, but as you were just saying, they are set, and you are very pleased with the way they are. So.
And our kids get the benefit, which I did not have.
Yes.
And your kids don't have, which is they're growing up in the same country as their grandparents.
Right.
Correct. And so extremely pleased that they get to develop those bonds and relationships. Ours were surrogate. So ours were, the family was really built around, some of the cousins and so on that were here, but mostly around my parents' contemporaries, Dad's college buddies.
Yeah.
That's who we would do, and their families. That's who we would do holidays with.
True. Yeah.
In our community, some of the, slightly older, maybe a decade, right? So not quite a generation older, somewhere in between, older than my folks, who essentially became our, surrogate grandparents.
Right. Yeah.
And so we had that influence. It was just different.
Yeah. Correct.
And so it's great to see that our kids get to have that direct interaction.
Yes.
With their grandparents.
Yep. That was going on in my mind when you were saying it too, because that is one thing that I feel kind of sad sometimes, that my kids are not able to experience the joy of being around my parents or my husband's parents, because just having grandparents is a different thing, They are probably tired of us already, They want grandparents around, and I just feel sad that we made the choice to come here and be here, but they are not getting that connection. And now they're getting older. They can't travel as much. So we try to take them, but again, summer stories, as you said, not always easy to take kids to school, to India in summer and stay there. But the first time I met Dr. Soin, it was at World Affair, and it was several years ago. I believe Meera was 4 or 5.
Okay, wow.
Yes.
That's a while ago.
That's a while ago, exactly. And he was there with his granddaughter, and I had recently moved to the area, and when I was looking for jobs, I believe I had seen his picture, and I had known him as just a picture. When I saw him there, I was like, that must be him, someone that so I went up to him and I introduced myself, spoke to him. He's the nicest person. He loves to talk to youngsters, and the way he makes everybody feel so warm, and he introduced me to your daughter. And recently, the most recent time that we went to World Affair with my own kids, and he was there with the youngest grandkids. So, that just tells me it's amazing to have that bonding between grandchildren and grandparents. And I think that is something that in Indian culture also, and again, as you said, Italian culture and other places, they really value family connection. So you are blessed, your kids are, and that is amazing. I just love to see that side of the Soin family too. Yeah. So that's great. So you've been on the board of Dayton Children's and Wright State University, and from what I know, Soin Foundation and Soin family is big into supporting the two areas, healthcare and education. So I would like to know your perspective on what are the challenges that are there in these two areas, specifically in the United States now, and how can we overcome it?
That's a big topic.
Yes, it is. It is. Let's talk about maybe one or two things that you think of. Yeah.
So, healthcare is a problem. Healthcare is a serious problem.
Yeah.
And not so much in the care of it,
Right.
but the business of it. And in particular, all of healthcare has gotten astronomically expensive. And it's not my personal opinion, which is not very popular, there's so many hands in the pocket, it's going to have to implode before it gets fixed because nobody's willing to fix this. And and there's not one thing or person or group or organization that's at fault. It's a big collective.
Right.
You know, the government sets the rules and the rates, maybe not necessarily the way we would in a competitive business. And so the hospitals, while most of them are not-for-profits, they operate like a for-profit business from a competitive standpoint. Look at our town.
Right, yeah.
We have two systems that put up hospitals and EDs across the street from each other. If this
Correct.
was truly community need,
Yeah.
we would do this differently. Okay. If it was competitive business, I would do it that way, like the gas stations.
Right, yeah.
You expect to see gas stations on opposing corners,
Yep.
but they're in competitive for-profit spaces. And so healthcare is a serious problem. You know, that is one place where I do think, and it's just, I don't know if it's pediatrics in general, but that is one place where I do believe Dayton Children's has done a really good job of trying to stay mission-centric. And frankly, we have to. We are one of the smaller communities in the country that has a children's hospital.
Right, yeah.
Growing up in this town, I didn't realize, I went off to school and then I came back and then I started getting involved. And I just thought every little town had a children's hospital because we did.
Right.
And I
yeah.
did not realize how much of a community asset that is.
Agree.
We have states that don't have children's hospitals.
Right.
And so, you know, the healthcare side, I don't know what the solution is to this one. But it is a problem. It is one that I think we can start taking incremental steps on. We'll see what happens.
Right.
Education's a little easier. Education costs have gone out of control, but education is, having been involved too, and this is again not a very popular thing, but education is labor driven.
Yeah.
And I think we have, so we've lost track of a few things. 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, state schools were truly state schools. Today, depending on the state schools get less than 20% of their funding from the state itself. So it's not our tax dollars going to work. Right. And so there is a reason tuition has had to climb at an extreme rate, and that's because, frankly, the subsidy has been also decreasing. Point one. Point two, part of higher education, this is very unpopular, is a transfer of wealth from families to faculty. And it really shouldn't be that way. It really should be like any other business. Again, most of those are not-for-profits, and so they run differently, but it really should be, I am delivering a service and a product, and my customer is the student and the family. You know, I do believe graduation rates are extremely important.
Right. Yeah.
but I also need to be careful of whom I admitting. And what I mean by that is, if I don't think this student is going to make it through all 4 years, them coming and spending a year or two and acquiring debt and no degree is doing them a disservice, not a
Exactly.
service.
Yep.
And so, that said, I think education is is an easier fix. Tenure is a huge problem. And so, if that can get resolved,
Right.
it helps the dynamic of the labor issue. And you can look around and say universities spend a lot on facilities and buildings and all that kind of stuff because you can see it.
Correct. Yeah.
When you dive into the financials,
Right.
majority of the expense is salaries. It's labor. And so, tweaking some of this ancillary spending isn't going to fix the problem. I got to fix the labor issue. An analogy I'll use is there is no university out there that has a parking problem. They all have scheduling problems.
Right. Yeah.
Parking lots are full between 10 and 2.
Right.
At 8 o'clock in the morning, I don't have a parking problem.
Yeah.
And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I don't have a parking problem.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? I'm not allocating the resources the way I
How true.
should be.
Correct. Yeah.
And so there are ways to optimize what we're doing, what we're delivering. I think there are ways for the universities to collaborate more. The state has started doing a better job. Universities are just smaller forms of government. Government moves extremely slow. But the state in general, Ohio's doing a better job of trying to operate more like a university system. And so if this university has a stellar program here, well, let's let them be the shining star
Right,
in that, or
yeah.
the center of excellence, or whatever you want to call
Correct.
it.
Correct. Yeah.
And then let's have these others fill the other roles. And then in today's world, with remote delivery of content, I mean, I could create a class, if I could get all the universities to agree, where it was taught by the finest professor
Right,
from
yeah.
all these different institutions
Correct.
that are going to collaborate together to put this whole class and series together.
Right. Right.
And there's a way to deliver it at a far reduced cost. So I think the university and the higher ed is a much more fixable problem.
Yeah.
So
Right. So when a third person looks at America, especially having a little bit of exposure to how Indians think, I would say this. Grass is always greener on the other side, right? So they think that USA is all flashy and hugely well developed, no issues here, and we know what we are dealing with when it comes to healthcare and education, as you said. The student loans is a huge problem here, and the insurance is a huge problem here in USA. And these are the things that when we think of, it scares us, honestly, it scares us when we start thinking about the details. So homelessness, right? Who would think there's homelessness in America, in USA, right? And so these are the problems that people outside of USA may not know about what's going on here. And so, well, coming back to healthcare and education, these two are really very important aspects of all of our lives, and the way Soin Foundation and Soin families decided to support these two compared to everything else in a much bigger way is commendable. I say, I hope some of your ideas get implemented and, we overcome these challenges. But it is a real problem. And that is the reason I wanted to just bring it up.
Well, and, tying it back. So these are core pillars of our philanthropy.
Right.
And it comes back to my parents. And that is, it's the teach a man to fish thing. Education.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Is how you can help yourself.
Right.
And so supporting education makes a lot of sense. Supporting Wright State, none of us went to Wright State, but it's in our community.
Right, yeah.
We're in business. The number of phenomenal Wright State graduates that we have hired through the years that work for us now.
Right.
It's easy to go, this needs our support, because I can directly see the results. I can see the outputs coming from there. And it's been highly beneficial to our family. And then, my parents' tenet has always been, the only time you can't help yourself is when you have serious health issues. And so that becomes the backstop.
Right. Yeah, very true. And then you brought up an important point, how important it is for us to support local, right? Wright State University, none of you went there, but it's important to give back there, to support there. So would you like to share a little bit about that? Because many of us, especially belonging to the Indian community, we are still attached to India, We want to give back to India, and many of us do a great job doing that, A lot of us are anonymous donors, but some of them are doing things in a great way where we know who's doing what. But in total, I want to understand from your point of view how important it is for you to give back to India. Do you continue that connection, or do you say, hey, that's just till my parents?
We don't, and even my parents do a little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah, so here.
And it's here. And
yeah.
it is, and I think that goes back to the idea of this is our home.
Right.
It goes back to the same, we didn't speak Hindi in the house. This is our home. This is our community. This is where we're going to do it.
Right.
And so, there is some amount of philanthropy that we do, particularly with a few organizations that maybe my grandparents were involved with in India and so on, but it pales in comparison to
what you're doing here.
To what we do here.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that makes sense to me, because this is the community that, this is the country that we have picked, this is the community that we have picked, this is where my kids are.
Yeah.
And so the focus really has shifted. Rightly or wrongly, that's just the way we do it.
Right. And then one thing that I remember from the conversation with Dr. Soin, he clearly said that we chose to come here and they have accepted us here, right? So that is just enough reason for us to give back to the community here, support us, support our communities. And again, our kids are growing up here, so they are part of this community. So it makes so much sense. And again, nothing wrong. Those of us who feel attached to India and who are able to support India, we should do that because we have come from there, we've learned, we have our roots there as well. So nothing wrong with that. Now, I would like to just, to complete what we are talking about, ask you, do you feel proud of your Indian heritage? How do you feel when you think back about that aspect of your background? Or do you consider yourself a whole and soul American? It is probably a difficult question to answer, but what are your thoughts, and how much do you like to be involved with, whether it's Indian community or in general, passing on the Indian heritage and culture to your kids, or in any way that you look at it?
So like I said, we've, from our children's standpoint, it's all been, let's expose them, their interactions with their grandparents, some of our friends, and so on, that are Indian. Their culture is an entire hybrid.
Right, right, yeah.
And it's funny because I feel now I'm very proud of my Indian heritage, but I almost sometimes am so integrated that I
Right.
forget.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, my wife's American, born in South Carolina.
Yeah.
Right? Our kids, if you saw them,
Yeah.
they don't look Indian. They're not like white,
Yeah.
but they're not Indian
Right,
brown.
right. Yeah, yeah.
They're, they would get mistaken a lot for Hispanic or
Okay.
Greek or Italian or
Right.
what have you. They all have dark hair, but sometimes.
And that's beautiful. I just
it
love.
is. We
yeah.
just- it-
yes.
That's just who we are,
Right.
how we are, where we are.
Yeah.
Our kids will joke sometimes, especially the boys are golfers, so they are in the sun all the time, so they tan.
Okay.
My daughter will tease me that you didn't give me enough Indian,
Oh.
right? Because I have to work hard at tanning and becoming brown, right?
Right. right, yeah.
And so that's just a funny joke or a
Yeah,
funny aside,
right,
but
right.
today it is. We're almost so integrated. I have to stop and think about the question you just asked,
Right. Right. yeah.
because it's not like in front or top of mind all
Yes,
the time.
yes.
This is just
Yeah, that is so true. I can understand where you're coming from because I was not born here. I did not grow up here. I just came here for my master's. So I finished my engineering in India, and then somehow my brother inspired me. So I was like, I never had in my wildest dreams thought that I would come to USA. Very close-knit family, so I always thought I'll be close by somewhere there. And now I can't believe I'm far away from all of them, trying to raise my own family here. So the point is, when I came back here 22 years ago, and now, if I think back, and now the way I'm integrated myself, it's worlds apart, you and me. But still, I feel the same way when I'm with my neighbors, when I'm with my friends who are here, born and raised here. I feel one among them. We have the same stories to share. We relate at the same level. So we have to put some effort sometimes to remind ourselves that. And again, I have to give credit to all of the natives here who have been here for a long time, who have embraced us so much. They don't see the difference either. And you are lucky to be married to an American, so I think that is another level there. But again, that it's amazing how we integrate. As well as how we are embraced. So both ways.
And I think as Indians in general, we're doing a better job of being more open and integrating and
Agree.
accepting as well.
Yes, yes.
When Melissa and I got married, it was there were a few mixed couples around.
Okay.
It wasn't super common. Of a lot of even my contemporaries, my generation, it's not very common,
Yeah.
but it's a whole lot more common now.
Right, yes.
And I think that is also the Indian families doing a better job of saying,
we welcome you.
we're
Yes, that's
open
true,
and
that's
we
true.
are welcoming.
Right.
And so that is, but and you made the point earlier, by nature,
Yeah.
majority of people are human
Correct, yeah.
and open
Our
and
needs are the
accepting
same. Yeah,
and
right.
don't necessarily see the differences in culture, skin tone, color, or I mean, frankly, even religious or political beliefs.
Right.
The fringes are what get us all in trouble.
Yes, yeah. And again, we have come a long way from, people who moved here like 60, 70 years ago. We are seeing Vivek Ramaswamy running for president. So, I mean, what else can we
Yeah.
hope for, right? We are integral as
Yes,
it could be.
England has a
Yes,
Indian PM, right?
exactly. Our vice president now is from Indian roots. So yeah, I mean, it's changed. The society has changed a lot. And again, thanks to folks like Melissa, who is
Yes.
like embracing, Indian culture and other cultures as well. So that's great. So now, we are running out of time. So I would like to ask you one question. Now you are the president of Varis Holdings. And I have to call it Varis because Dr. Soin mentioned to me how the name came up,
Yeah.
and that was fascinating. So, what would you like to say to budding entrepreneurs? I know you have a little bit of background from psychology and philosophy as well, and that you incorporate in your style, so in your business style, and any advice you would like to give?
So, a couple of things. The one thing I would say is anybody who is on the fence, do it. Failure's not bad.
Yeah.
Failure you learn a lot from. I'm sure Dad went through the stories of the various failures he had
Right. Yeah.
before we kind of got one right.
Right.
And even to this day,
Yeah.
I make mistakes every single day. I make a bad investment all the time.
Right.
It's a little different today than it may have been when you were first starting
Yeah.
out. When you're first starting out, you have to have concentration risk. That's just what happens.
Right.
And so it seems more daunting or scary because failure seems very big. My neighbor, dear friend, and they're in business also, and they started right out of college. And they went into the restaurant business of all things. Extremely successful.
Yeah.
But came out of college, they went into the restaurant business, and today looking back, right, the mentality would be, and John would say, we were young enough. We knew if this whole thing blew up, we had time. We could bounce back.
Right, yeah.
We could do it. And that's probably the other thing I would say is never underestimate yourself. Every entrepreneur out there that's been highly successful is a bit of a bull in a china shop. They will, they will do what my wife and I say is FITFO, and that is figure it the F out. They will just do whatever it takes. And so that's probably the other thing is don't underestimate yourself, and because of that, be willing to do it, be willing to try. And failure's not bad. It is okay to go, this isn't working, pull the plug, move on.
Yeah.
It's at this point in my career, I've seen and had enough failure along the way. It's easy to say, that's not working, let's cut, move on.
Okay.
So I would say those are the things.
So how do you come out of failures? Like, what do you tell yourself? Let's say it's a huge loss, it's a big failure,
I've had some
Yeah, I'm sure.
massive ones.
Right. So what do you tell yourself? Or what do you teach your kids?
Where
how do
you're
you
going to
face
make
failure?
mistakes.
Okay.
Okay. What did I learn from that?
Right.
What am I changing going forward?
Yeah.
We had a deal years ago buying a business, and it did not work out well. But it has completely changed the way we do diligence of business today.
Right.
I might make a different mistake, but I will not make that mistake again.
Correct. Yeah. That should be a good, that's the way we have to think about it. Right. So one more question for you. Who would you consider your role model besides your family members? Anyone outside that has influenced you?
So I have
You have great role models at home, so I was just curious to know.
I have a business mentor.
Okay.
Who's a dear friend, and actually, he's a dear friend of my father and a contemporary of my father.
Okay.
But there's a gentleman, he now lives in Hilton Head, South Carolina, Don Graber.
Okay.
Don grew up as a executive at General Electric under Jack Welch. He went on to be president, CEO of Black & Decker, and then moved here into town at Huffy Corporation. And he has been a friend, colleague, mentor, co-investor, all of those things. But Don has taught me so much, and he's always there. If I'm working on something right now and I picked up the phone and said, hey, I want to bounce this off of
Nice.
you.
Yeah.
And Don, there's a few things he had taught me. One is he said, always make a decision with measured speed. You're not going to get all the facts. Don't wait for them.
Right.
And then he will always sit down if we're discussing some topic with his little yellow pad and 2 columns, just literal pro-con columns. Let's run through this and
Yeah.
let's make a decision.
Right.
But from a business standpoint, probably my biggest or fondest mentor.
Nice. What are your aspirations, Vishal?
So I have I do some goal setting and things like that at the
Right.
beginning of every year.
Right.
And I'll put at the top of the sheet has my 5 goals for the year. Typically 2 to 3 of them are business related, a couple of them might be personal, and then I'll have a little more detail, milestones, and how I want to get those done.
Sure.
But at the very, very top of the sheet, I put my motto, and that is, I want to be the man my kids believe I am. Because frankly,
Wow.
I think my kids
Yeah.
think I am a better person than I am, and I should strive to be that person. That's
Wow. That's very impressive, the way you look at it. I mean, you have achieved a lot, yet you aspire to be the person that your children think you are. That's phenomenal. Yeah.
Thank
yeah,
you.
It is. So what do you do for fun? Besides, I had to ask this question because I know your dad was into flying planes and whatnot.
So I am a pilot. I have I've flown since I was 18 years old.
Oh,
part
wow.
of the reason I picked Purdue is they had an on-campus airport, and I wanted to learn how to fly.
Okay.
And so I continue to do that. Luckily, with all the success, we're blessed to be able to do that.
Right.
So I continue that. I play golf, and that's a passion I got from my father that my kids have now picked up.
Yeah.
And things are working the way they should be. I developed a better game than my father did, and my kids are far better than I am.
Okay.
But no, I like to golf.
Yeah.
We're outdoors people. So hunting, fishing. I just got back from a weekend in the hills of West Virginia, off-roading, jeeping
nice.
with my boys. And so, they've all picked up those parts of what we do for fun as well. But for me, the fun primarily revolves with the outdoors.
Nice. Very nice to hear. I so enjoyed this conversation, Vishal. I hope you did
Yes.
too. Thank you so much for taking this time to
Thank
come
you.
today
Yes.
and spending time with us, just telling a little bit more about your journey. And we always love to hear more from the Soin family, as we all in Dayton, we owe you guys a lot, your family a lot. You're supporting healthcare, you're supporting education, you're giving back in ways that inspire many of us youngsters. So
Well, and this again goes back to my parents, but
Yeah.
we do that because we have been the recipient of so much that the community has to offer, right? So our businesses were built here, but they were a collective build. They were built with the folks in our community working hand in hand with us and together. And so it's easy to give back to the community because we have what we have because of it.
That's amazing, just the way you think about it. So much humility in what you say. Thank you again, Vishal.
Thank you.
And thank you to our viewers for watching our program today. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Mr. Vishal Soin. We'll continue to bring inspirational folks on our programs. I hope you'll tune in again. Thank you so much. Until next time, take care, stay happy, stay healthy. Namaste.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one-of-its-kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sphurti, shakti and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.